something different for you today. I'm going to give you an example using lamb of the cycles and the timings of what goes into the food you eat. So like I said, let's go for it. Lamb. So you want to start a lamb farm, okay? You want to be selling meat direct to customers, or do you want to be selling it to an abattoir? That's something you need to decide first. For me, I'm going to do both. So we're a commercial farm. We have sheep for commercial purposes, and we want to sell them to markets as well as to our own customers. So how did we start? Well, we grew by investing in the flock. We found good quality mothers, which we use clen sheep. They were about £250 each, and we bought, say, about 200 of those. So 200 decent sheep for breeding are going to cost you, the farmer, about £50,000. For 200 breeding sheep, you're probably going to want at least 4 rams. Now, decent rams, they're going to cost you. They're not likely to cost you less than £400 to £500 each. So let's say you're going to buy 4 for £500. That's £2,000. Then you need to work out how much grass you're going to need. So for 200 sheep, depending on your ratios and quality of grass, it can vary from 5 sheep to 10 sheep an acre. But let's meet somewhere in the middle and say 8 sheep per acre. In my opinion, that's slightly tight, but let's do that just for the fun of today. That means you're going to need at least 25 approximately to 30 acres of decent grass first off to rear these sheep. So the whole cycle starts when the nights start to draw in and around the autumn. We put our tups or rams in by about the 1st of October. So you need to make sure that your sheep have been on prime grazing land before this, away from these tups and rams, so the rams need to have been somewhere else. And this is called flushing, where they have a couple of weeks on incredibly decent quality, which a lot of the time, let's say you had 30 acres, you've probably reserved half of it by this time for a short while to gain some traction and gain some growth to put all of your flock onto. This then entices their body to release more eggs because it's getting a lot of decent nutrition, and the body thinks the resources are good, let's have loads of lambs, etc, etc. So that's the kind of thing you want to be doing. Now, depending on how you're going to do it, you're going to want to have the rams in for at least 6 weeks. Some people leave them in for 6 to 8 weeks. Then they take them out religiously. That's how a lot of people do it. And then it is what it is for the results. A farm like us, maybe a farm, if you're going to be about the size of us, of 200. We do have more sheep than that, but I'm using 200 as an example. You might want to leave them in a bit longer. If you're going to be around and not too worried about the work dragging on a bit longer, you might find that leaving them in a bit longer is absolutely fine. For us, we've left them in for ages before, and we've had lambs late, and we don't really mind because we're still checking them and whatnot. But a lot of the time, people do it for 6 to 8 weeks, bang. So they know their lambing window will also be that time. So 6 to 8 weeks have passed. You've got the rams out. They've got a little paddock somewhere out the way, keeping themselves to themselves. So now you've got the winter time to deal with. Now you have multiple options for the winter. Some people will have stubble turnips like we have done. Or if you've still got some decent grazing left, you'll let them graze, but you'll supplement them with mineral licks perhaps, silage, hay, etc. So you've got a long winter of looking after your sheep because they need to have the top-notch nutrition to be growing these lambs and be in great condition. So it's quite a hard balance. The best bet is, like I said, to supplement. In my opinion, there's very few places in the world that can supplement a lamb entirely on grass, growth of a lamb, sorry, entirely on grass over the winter. So that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. Some places like hill farms and hill sheep fare better in these instances than what like my sheep would, because they're a low grazing breed of sheep. So if you're somewhere like that and you've got a lot of grazing but it might not be full on quality, and you're looking into and you're interested in grazing them like hills or mountains, then that's the kind of thing you want to be going for. You still might be able to do supplements though, which in the form of like a little tub lick. So over the winter you're going to have problems with your feet of the sheep. You're going to have problems with sheep losing condition. You might be having problems with worms. So over the winter, you've got to routinely get your sheep in excuse me, got to get your sheep in, and you've got to get your sheep good checks over them, check their feet and check everything, worm egg counts, checking their health and their condition, and treating if necessary. You might have to be treating for antibiotics, you might have to be giving them oral drenches, you might have to be giving them some spot on treatment for different problems in their wool. There's a million things a sheep can die from, so you need to be a vet as well as a farmer. But now lambing's really close. All your sheep look good, you've done all your checks over the winter, you're getting closer. So about a month-ish before we lamb, we will give them a vaccination for Pasteurella and for coccidial diseases. And what's really good about this is that the mother, when she gives the lamb the milk in a few weeks' time, will have the resistance there in the milk and passing it on to the lamb. So what we're doing is building up resistance to nasty diseases and things that you can get from soils to give us the best chance of the sheep and the lambs being healthy and getting a good start. So yeah, now it's lambing time, and now the work really starts. You're down there, you're 24/7 care, round the clock, lambing for 6 to 8 weeks. You're looking out for the sheep, you're becoming a vet, you're going to have sheep die, you're going to have lambs die, and that's something you're going to have to just live with. But my advice with lambing is, if in your heart you know you've done your absolute best and you haven't been lazy and you haven't had any of those shoulda, woulda, coulda moments, then you've done the job right, because you're going to get losses, and that's just a fact. But whilst they're in, you're feeding them and they're costing you. So the fact is, you've got to get them done and out as quick as you can. But the issue is when do you lamb? Like I said, I put my tups in 1st of October roughly, and that gives us a lambing window of approximately end of February, beginning of March. Now you might want to put your tups or rams in later. It gives you more options, because the springtime they'll be lambing, it'll be a bit later, and you might have more grass growing, etc, etc. These are all things you need to work out 5 months ago and not be working it out now. So yeah, now let's say this is all going well and you've got 200 sheep and they're lambing at 150%. Wow, you're going to have 250 lambs. Okay, that's really good. So where and what do we do or send 250 lambs? So let's say everything's gone well. You've got your 150% lambing rate, which is 250 lambs. Good for you. Now, where do we go with this? We butcher some for our customers, which you can make, let's say, £150 for a lamb. There are some costs in that, which I'll go through in a moment. Or you can sell direct to markets, abattoirs, or different combinations of the two. At the moment, lamb prices haven't been too bad. So let me just tell you an average price of lamb at the moment compared to the price of lamb on the website. So depending on what you do and the size of your lamb, current prices are quite good. I'm going to use a rough ballpark of £150 a lamb for a decent sized lamb. And obviously it can vary either way. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to do a price that I would say was probably quite good. And we'll call it £150 to give you some kind of idea of what we should be aiming for. And it could give you an idea and some scope as to the pricing and the profit margins of farming. So let's say every lamb we've got, we sell for £150. So £150 a lamb, you're happy with that. You think that's gone quite well. And your year has been expensive. You've bought tups, you've bought sheep, you've bought feed, you've bought mineral licks, you've bought vaccinations, you've bought hay, you've bought straw, you've bought water, you've bought electricity, you've not paid yourself any wages, you've booked in transport, you've paid for your vehicles, you've paid your loans. And after all of that, you still haven't got your initial money back for the investment. As we remembered, we said that our sheep cost us £50,000. So we think with rams, we've spent £52,500 on sheep and livestock alone. If you sell all of your lambs for a good price at the £150 mark, you've now made £37,500. You've now got a shortfall of £14,000. So that's not a loss, because hopefully you've still got all the sheep, that you had originally, and you've still got the rams. Now, this is the numbers game in farming. You need to make sure those sheep stay healthy, because That's where your profit is, because hopefully next year you won't be having to spend that money. And if you had the same numbers next year, but you hadn't really lost any sheep, then you'd be in the plus. But what happens is, over time, sheep get defects, they get problems, they do die. And you then have to come into your different costings. Like, say, for example, after lambing time, you've got shearing and things like this, and it does start to push on into the costs before your next lambing time. And they're not silly costs, but you've got to have the good grazing. So if all goes well, by the end of the summer, you should have £37,500 in the bank from your sheep and a strong, healthy flock. So now, that is sheep farming in the year cycle. I hope you found it enjoyable and informative, and it's a really decent example of how farming's profits are so variable and so on a whim, because sheep farming has the ability and potential to be very good, but the more and more time goes on, the more chances you have of problems and losses and things like this. So it's our job as farmers to make sure we care for our animals as absolutely obsessively as we can, because our profit lies in their lives.